Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about three I's: ideas, inspiration, and intellectual property. First off, let's talk about ideas. I don't know if you've heard the saying, "There are no new ideas anymore." And for the most part, it is pretty true. It's not to say that somebody can't eventually come up with something brand new, but the possibilities of it happening very low. And before anybody gets upset, that does not mean that I don't think something could be brand new and unique and creative. But at this point in our species evolution, most of the time, stuff we come up with is something that relates to the second eye, inspiration. For example, you all remember the flip phones, little flip phones. Well, those were inspired by the little quarters. I don't remember the name for it, but from Star Trek in the 1960s. Somebody saw that, saw what it did, and was inspired to create the flip phone. And that's the big I in this whole thing is you can be inspired by somebody else's work and want to do something related to it. And I say related because if you read Harry Potter and you're like, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer just like J.K. Rowling, and you wrote a story about a boy sorcerer named Barry, whose best friends were named Dawn and Harmony. Guess what? You weren't inspired by that. You're taking somebody's idea, just changing a few things and saying this is yours, and that relates to the third eye, which is intellectual property. Now, as somebody who does create things, such as myself, intellectual property is a huge deal. It's very important. You can be inspired by somebody else's work. You can then take that inspiration and create your own. And yes, while it was inspired by it, it is your own, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's only when you actually take somebody's idea, make a few changes, and pass this off as something unique, that's a problem. I don't know how many of you know this, but that whole 50 Shades of Grey book started as fan fiction. The author wrote about what was the two characters from Twilight? The two main characters, the vampire and his human girlfriend, right? She wrote that as fan fiction, and enough people got interested in it that when she eventually sold it, she had to make a lot of changes. She had to make those changes because if she didn't, the author of the Twilight series could sue her for infringing on her intellectual property, and she would have won the case. So, intellectual property, huge deal. You can be inspired by somebody. You can, absolutely. You can take that inspiration. You can go, well, what if they did this? And then you go off running. And that is absolutely wonderful. There's no problems with that. It's only when you actually take somebody's idea, just tweak it a little bit, and then say, look what I created. You didn't create it. You took somebody else's hard work and you changed a few names, you maybe changed the setting, and you said this is unique, and it's not. And that kind of theft isn't just like theft of somebody's intellectual property. It's a theft of somebody's potential livelihood. It's a theft of their hard work, what they have put into it. Those are kind of things. I mean, I personally do not take lightly. I don't. I have copyrighted everything that I have actually put out there in publishing because while yes, international copyright laws usually state that the minute you commit an idea to a readable format that it is protected, the copyright protection is just that extra layer. And I do that not because I think people are going to steal from me, because you can't look at people that way, but because I want to protect something that I've worked very hard on. And there's nothing wrong with that. But by the same token, let's get back into inspirations just for a quick second, because a lot of writers especially start off writing fan fiction. Nothing wrong with fan fiction, because see, fan fiction, as long as you're not selling it, actually doesn't fall into that whole intellectual property thing. And I know it sounds weird, but it's just how the public domain works. If you are playing a video game such as, say, Overwatch, and you want to write a fan fiction about one of the characters named Mei, nothing wrong with that. You can write fan fiction. You can post it where others can read it. You can have others be inspired by your fan fiction and write their own takes on the fan fiction and stuff like that. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is people being creative. This is people being inspired by somebody else's work and deciding to do something on their own with it. That's not an issue. That's not a problem. If you do take that fan fiction and then you say, okay, you know what? I have a collection of stories that I've written as fan fiction, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish them and I'm going to sell them. That's where you fall into the intellectual property gray area, where more than likely Blizzard and Activision Entertainment would sue you and they would win. And as an author, you don't want that kind of publicity. You don't want that kind of attention. I mean, you want attention because your works are well done and that people enjoy reading them. You don't want that kind of attention that you're a thief. Because that kind of label, that will tar you probably for the rest of your life. So, if you ever read something or watch something or anything like that and you're inspired to create something related to that, as long as you're not doing it for profit, that's the key. And of course, then we get back into the whole public domain thing, because there are certain things that are public domain. And like, if you've ever seen a t-shirt with like Bugs Bunny on it, and you know, like Bugs Bunny, let's say he's got a party hat on and he's drinking it up and stuff like that, you know, or he's wearing, you know, like cool clothes, or he's doing like hand gestures that kids do nowadays, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by doing them. You know, that, because it's in the public domain, that's why they can get away with it. Things such as the character Aladdin from 1001 Arabian Nights, not the Disney movie, public domain. Interesting sidebar. A lot of Disney's earlier works were taken from the public domain. Little Mermaid, Cinderella, Snow White. These are all characters that exist in the public domain, and Walt Disney found them and brought them back into the world. A lot of, you know, and then of course you get into the whole thing about public domain, where Walt Disney actually fought really hard. That's why Mickey Mouse has never been in the public domain, because Walt Disney has sued to change the public domain laws so that his characters, well, not him personally, but the company has, so that way they stay in their control and they don't get out there for others to take and use as they see fit. Public domain is actually pretty important. But that's a whole another video. I don't want to get off context. But so let's recap and summarize. Ideas. Chances are very few people out there in this world are going to have a completely unique idea. Any idea they have, somebody could point to and go, well, that's got a little bit of this, that's got a little bit of that, that's got a little bit of that, and that. And again, there's nothing wrong, because that means that you were inspired by something that somebody else has done or that you saw. Nothing wrong with being inspired and taking that inspiration and fueling it and making something original. And I say original like that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, like, obviously J.K. Rowling, when she wrote Harry Potter, she was inspired by stories she had heard as a kid, fairy tales about wizards and things like that. And again, she took something that she'd heard, it inspired her, and she created something original from it. And that's wonderful. But by that same token, if you are inspired by an artist, be respectful of their intellectual property. Do not just blatantly rip off somebody else's work, because that, you're a thief. Don't do that. Don't be like that. You know, use the inspiration and create something new. Don't just change a few names and places and say, this is unique, this isn't original. Don't do that. So, that's all for today. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to leave a like down below. And if you are a first-time subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I will talk to you all later. Have a good day.